we talk a lot about agility, as you probably noticed from some of the marketing material, and there's a white paper on our website that talks about agility, but it really is from the product point of view. And what I want to do is take a few minutes, hopefully a very small number of minutes, to just talk about agility maybe in a broader context. And probably what I should start with is a definition of it. And how we define agility is really, it's a lot related to what we just talked about, which is, this capacity not only to respond to change, but also to be able to use it for competitive advantage. So the difference really between coping and managing, and a lot of what Graham's been talking about is really that difference. Companies cope, they fight fires, they get stuff done, but they don't manage. And when you speak to someone in the industry right now, it is quite a depressing conversation because, you say, okay, generally you don't hear people saying they're managing, you say they're coping, and the word barely is kind of implied in the bit between, I'm barely coping. But change is really an opportunity, and we see change all the time. So change is actually most of our jobs, whether it's new acquisitions, new developments, new wells being drilled, new completions, but also in the North Sea, we've got to deal with the situation of declining production. That's a significant change, and when we're talking to Fairfield about what they do, it's quite amazing. To keep the production going, day by day, it's almost an ongoing task to do that. It requires tons of intervention, and it's really incredibly impressive. But all that needs to be managed in an allocation context. We've got changes to the rules. Obviously, one of the things that Taka talked about at previous conversations or previous HA forums has been the fact that they got unexpected fluid properties. They got early water breakthrough, and that changed the allocation rules, and they had to deal with that change almost over a 24-hour period. And the last thing is oil price. Now, I've deliberately not said falling oil price because that's not what our issue is. If the oil price was always $50 a barrel, then we could probably all live with that. It's the fact that tomorrow it might be 20 and the day after it might be 200. And the fact that our industry is populated with analysts who are prepared to make up numbers depending on whatever the context. There appears to be a line drawn through the last 2 years of production. So change is, to use an age-old phrase, change is the only constant. So when we talk about really hydrocarbon accounting, I don't know if I adjust my iPad. No, it doesn't seem to make any difference. Okay. We really see agility coming in kind of four segments. There's agility for cost, so being able to match costs to the job at hand. There's technical agility, and we've talked about standardization, but one of the challenges of standardization is technically how do you deal with systems that go from one well or 100 wells through to 10,000 wells and maybe 20 or 30 assets. Those assets may be a different type. We have the system on BTC, since we've already mentioned that, crude oil pipeline, characteristics, commercial, PSA environment, and then we've got the North Sea. One set of systems dealing with that requires a wide range, ability to handle a wide range of design conditions. And the last bit is the platform. You want that to be extensible. You want to be able to deal with things that probably you can't anticipate today. But actually, and the point I want to really make, and depending on the time I might stop even here, but the point I really want to make is that actually most of the stuff I'm talking about is not about IT, it's not about hydrocarbon accounting, it's about broadly across the business thinking differently. So whether it's strategic at the kind of CEO level or engineering or IT or compliance or reporting, it's all about a different way of thinking about the problem. And we've been beginning to talk about it today. I mean, Graham's prompted a lot of discussions. But I think, from a personal point of view, it's a bit of an insight into how we might position some of the discussions differently. And what's important is to ask, what business are we actually in? Because I think that's one of the things that came out of the conversations we've had with Graham is that a lot of people talk about the value chain, and Norwegians have been fixated with the value chain for a long time. And what they mean is we do metering and it comes out as an invoice at the end, and there's accounting, metering, and allocation in the middle. But the reality of it is that the value chain is the one from investor round to production, round to returns, and actually within that loop, that value cycle, the importance of metering and hydrocarbon accounting is absolutely critical to that, and it's hitting investors or adding to investors' money in their pocket, and it's justifying further investment. So it's a completely different conversation, a different argument, and it really says, if that's our goal, what do we need to do to make that happen, and how do we have that conversation at a senior level? One of the things, the entry points, one of the systems that I think is probably most flawed right now, and it covers the base, is procurement. It's just one aspect of the business. I've chosen it at random just to kind of demonstrate it. Current procurement processes, I would struggle to define what current procurement processes are actually for. For the most part, if you ask me for a quick analysis of what procurement should do, they should be find someone that you trust. That's really the basis of it. None of the questions anyone ever asks in a procurement process actually elicit the right answer. They have a long list to which the answer is invariably yes. I would love to see other vendors' submissions to procurement processes, but I can't imagine any of them go, no, we can't do any of that stuff. And they go very slowly. In general, they're a compromise between what people actually wanted and what they felt they could ask for. Cost is unpredictable, and invariably, at the end of it all, the goal is to remain in the job at the end. So every project is a success. I don't think I've come across anyone who's told me that their project went really badly. That was it was hard, but delivered in the end. But it's important that IT, when you're talking it from an IT perspective, it isn't a product. Agility is not a product. It's not something that people can give to you. And again, we touched on this a bit before, and that's why our slogan is really the kind of, we don't say we will make you agile, or it's an agile product. What we're talking about is that the mindset needs to be one in which we are doing the right things, we are asking the right questions, and then the right systems can help you in an agile context. So I'd really summarize it like this. It's the alignment of the promise of IT, look at IT, with the unspoken needs of the business. When you think about things like iPhones, there was nobody asking for an iPhone beforehand. Having a BlackBerry with email in your pocket was a terrific advance. Now we have a whole ecosystem out there, really just designed where nobody worries about the kind of walled garden of Apple, because they don't get viruses and they get a certain amount of quality. Again, that's the position where people have looked consciously at the landscape, looked at what people actually want to do, looked at the challenges that we face, and have developed something that's a response to that, as opposed to being led into it and expecting people to tell you exactly what they want. There's a big problem, though, with most organizations, is that the way they're set up, it really is problematic in terms of IT in the business. So most of the time, IT view the business really, those business guys are all over the shop, they do anything they like, they're roaming all over the place, they come up with daft ideas, and the job of IT is to be a sheepdog and keep them and corral them and get them in the context. The business, on the other hand, view IT as the ball and chain. They're the people who stop you doing clever things. You've got your phone, you're going to bring it in, you're going to get your data on your phone. No, IT say that's not really possible. There's a big security risk in that. And that creates a tension. So from the IT point of view, we want to control things, we want to have it centralized, we want to have order. And if we don't do that, if we let the business do what they want to do, then there'll be chaos. Everything will go round. And from a business point of view, we want an element of freedom. And the other way lies stagnation. It's a system that we talked about it before. It's a system we had for the last 10 years, and nobody wants to change it, and it seems to work. So all the things that have come up in recent years, like bring your own device. I want to bring my laptop or my iPad into an organization. Most of the conversations from an IT point of view have been, how do we stop that happening? And laterally now we're kind of beginning to see, how can we allow it, but how can we control it instead? Excel, the number of IT people I come to who say, well, the one thing we want to do is rip Excel from the hands of the users because they're really dangerous when they get that. Not how do we help them use it effectively in the context of the business. Google Maps, VBA, all the same. When I contrast what we do with IT, with systems and delivery and so on, with the internet, it's really striking. The internet really is, or the web is the world's biggest information store. But it has limited controls. There's very few people. Domain names is kind of it. It has layered standards, so things are built up incrementally, but built on standards. So DHCP and DNS and all TCP/IP, all those kind of nice pieces of it are all independent, but layered on top, so that incrementally it delivers value. It's very simple to integrate with it. You don't worry about it. You've got a web browser, that's you done, or if you use HTTP, it's done. One of the really interesting bits about the internet is that the metadata is really rich. So in the old days, there used to be these things called libraries. You might have heard of them. And if you went in there, they used the Dewey Decimal System. So you saw these little numbers and the dots on the back. And if you looked it up, you could actually say, well, this is a technical book. It's about Java, and it's in this particular area. Now, if you go and look in a bookstore now, Amazon being one example of it, what metadata do you have now? Not that number, but what you have is a whole set of information. You have the ability to look inside the book, have a little bit of scan of it. And equally importantly, you have the reviews from other people. So you have a whole set of content that people are there. So the whole interaction is much richer, and what you discover is much more about contributions from other people, the way that they have done things. So context for information is accreted rather than being predefined. So the portal is there, people can add to it, and the richness of information grows over time. It's naturally ranked. So if something like Google, then the quality of data. We talk about somehow managing to make data high quality. It is, but if you think again about things like search results. How many people have ever gone to page 2 on Google? That's like that way lies hell, really, because if it's not on page 1, then that's probably a different search you need to do at that point. And that's because they've ranked the results on the basis of the reliability. It might be on the number of people who have cited that particular, or who linked to that particular piece of information. So there's stuff happening there that we are not even beginning to take advantage of in our own systems. That's really one of the kind of points that you're making, is that there's a cultural problem as much as there is a technical problem. The technology largely exists. And of course, the internet is, of course, the fifth man on the pub quiz team now, which is its most invaluable feature. So I think all of us have to ask some key questions in order, if we're going to drive some of the changes that we've talked about earlier on. And first and foremost, what is my job? What are we trying to do as hydrocarbon accountants? What are we trying to do in terms of the business? And I think it is really what Graham was talking about, which is a lot more to do with we're changing the value of the business. We are addressing the value of the business. And in that context, what are the priorities? What can I do better? What tool sets do I have? And I don't mean what does the company provide, but what do I have personally? What can I bring to the job that would make a difference? And I don't care if it's Excel. Who can I work with? I mean, again, I think one of the issues that we have is that we tend to be a fairly isolated community, and therefore we don't interact with the broader business. And I think that limits the value of a lot of the businesses that we're involved with. And then finally, what's the smallest thing that I could do? What's the smallest thing I could do tomorrow that would make a change to my business? Because agility is not a big thing. It's a small set of incremental changes. So the final thing I want to say is agility is not about technology. It's not about any of the puzzle pieces. It's not about metering. It's a state of mind. And again, that's this whole cultural thing about thinking about what our business is and how we do it, and embedding some of these new technologies, new ideas in the business is as much to do with how we approach it. And we can influence others. We can help people join with us in being agile.